Falchigu Academy Ushkabe Ila. Now, can we check that people can see us and hear us?
Yeah, we do seem to have some people watching, so if you could give us a wee thumbs up, just so we know.
I've noticed as well tonight that we're very professional because we've got our new introductory film. So I want to say thank you to Skippinish, because that's the Skippinish tune, Steer by the Stars, and Angus has given that to me to use. So thanks very much to Skippinish, and if you want to hear any of their music, all good music sharing apps. So that's that.
Yep, so, great stuff.
Here we are with our IWE Live. Oh, hello, John Brady. How are you? Nice to have you with us. This is IWE Live 4. And hello, Donna. How are you tonight? And with myself, Rachel, and our super host, Mr. Neil Murphy from Glasgowshire. So this is, I'm in Isla Whisky Academy HQ in Bowmore, and Neil's in Glasgowshire. So I'll let Neil do a wee bit about what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, so obviously for anyone who doesn't know, the Isla Whisky Academy is all about delivering educational experiences that sort of enrich your whisky journey, if you like, and maybe encourage people to take their interest to the next level. And IWA Live, I suppose, is a way of us reaching out to people and maybe showing what we're about, kind of, So tonight, we do have a guest tonight. We're going to be talking about geeks with a geek, aren't we?
and whisky, I think, is one of the only places where it's actually a compliment to be called a geek. And if you're an uber geek or a super geek, it's even better.
Yeah, do you know it's funny?
A brilliant quiz.
Oh, we do, yes.
Man here.
Yeah, I was thinking about the geek thing when we were sort of preparing for this, actually, and I do think that the term has kind of changed. It doesn't necessarily have the negative connotations it used to have. I mean, I think I've always been a geek. I've always had sort of strange interests, even since I was a kid, that people would consider quite geeky.
Yeah, Neil.
Aye, but when I was growing up, it felt like you had to hide that stuff, like especially when you were becoming a teenager and stuff and interested in the opposite sex. You couldn't be honest about the geeky things you were into. It feels like now people wear it on their sleeve. People are like
it's
really
cool.
proud of it's almost cool. People go to conventions and dress up as people and things like that. It's all out there and loud and proud now. So I mean, fair play to them, but I still sort of feel a bit embarrassed about talking about it sometimes. Just a generational thing, I think. But yeah, whiskey is certainly, it's not quite the same with whiskey. I think there's an element of street cred you get from being into Scotch and whiskey and stuff, maybe. So it's
and also there's different levels of geekdom, I would say, and different styles of geekdom. In the whiskey industry for definite. But I want to mention, I would say, the godfather of Scotch Whisky Geek to me is Derek Mather. Now, if you don't know Derek Mather, hello David, how are you? Derek Mather owns the Artisan Whisky Bar in Wishaw, and about this is how much of a geek Derek is, that I would say maybe 12 to 14 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I can't exactly remember, but I interviewed him for Whisky for Girls, right? And at that point, Derek had never been to Berate, right? But he was the biggest collector of Berate, and he had a tattoo of Berate, a special made logo. I mean, now it's not small, it's huge. It's like that size. He had this tattoo, and I was fascinated by this man that would have a tattoo and love and be so passionate about whiskey and about Berate that hadn't been even there yet. I mean, you know, he practically lives there now, but I thought that was so cool. So I want to mention Derek as the godfather of Scotch geekery.
Yeah, I mean, do you know, it's funny though, because I do think whiskey's got something about it that appeals to geeks. I think, you know, like it can be fixed into wee categories and regions, and there's lots of history to explore. There's lots of different styles, and I think if geeks are anything like me anyway, that's something I kind of like, is, you know, listing things and categorizing things. I think there's a lot in whiskey that appeals to that sort of mentality.
That's very interesting that you've said that, Neil, because what I found was that a lot of people that owned casks were computer geeks, right? And they might be people who don't interact a lot with people. They sit at home and they work behind a keyboard, you know, so they maybe worked a lot and were successful, but they didn't go out at night and hang out with people because they hadn't made friends because they worked hard in school, you know. And then they got into whiskey and they had quite a high disposable income, so they bought casks. This I'm talking about a while ago, and this was a way of connecting with people on an emotional level. And because whiskey is so it's so strong and visceral, and you know, it's of the land and it's really deeply connected to the land, and when they would fall in love with the distillery and go and visit the distillery, you know, they would make friends with the distillery people and things like that. And I think it was a very deep way of people could connect, where they didn't maybe have that because they weren't into football or they didn't follow bands. Do you know what I mean? So this became like their thing.
Yeah. John Brady asks, what should you dress up as to cosplay at a whiskey festival? Is that not what everyone does anyway, John, when they all turn up wearing tweed and stuff like that? Is that not what happens anyway? That's kind of the whiskey uniform, isn't it?
But I tell you, years ago,
cap and all that,
I was in the William Street Hilton, right? And we'd been somewhere now. Was it maybe the Women in Whiskey lunch that Geraldine organises in the pot still? I can't remember, right? So we'd had we'd enjoyed the evening. So we came back to the Hilton for a nightcap, and then I went outside to have a healthy breath of fresh air, you know, as you do. And there was all these people dressed up in strange clothes, and it turned out they were like from a Star Trek convention or something. But because I was tired and emotional, I thought that I was maybe seeing things, because why would you have all these Star Trek watching about in William Street, Glasgow? Has that in the name? But then in the morning when we would have a different breakfast, here they are again with all their stuff.
Yeah, he's swearing off the whiskey forever because you keep seeing fun on.
So will we introduce our
I think we should.
A guest and bring him in. So instead of just talking about Super Geeks, we thought we would actually bring a Super Geek to speak to you. So this guy is a blogger, and he also does his own podcast. And how I know him is through Malt Maniacs, always asking questions and always writing answers and being very curious and being very precise and pedantic about things. And I found this very fascinating. So our Uber Geek tonight is David. Oh God, I said it right earlier. David Tjeder from Stockholm.
Good evening, David.
Welcome, David.
Thank you. Love to be introduced as being like a really pedantic person. It's like, hi, that's me. I'm the geek.
Most folk wouldn't like that, but that's a good thing in our world.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah. And thanks for having me on. It's going to be I'm really, really happy to be here. So that'll be fun.
So can you tell us what what would you define as a geek, and why are you not offended by me calling you that, David?
Oh, I guess
You are what I mean.
I guess in terms of whiskey, there are so many. It's got like levels of geekery to it. I think sometimes when I meet people who just enjoy whiskey, they tend to say, "Oh yeah, I quite like whiskey, but I don't know anything," as if it has to be this kind of, you have to have loads and loads and loads of knowledge in order to just drink whiskey, which I don't like at all. It's supposed to be for everyone, and you're not, you don't have to sort of excuse yourself saying, but I don't know anything. I don't know what this or that is, and I don't know that any, And so I guess I was there at one point, just enjoying whiskey and being quite proud of not being geeky. And then I just started to get into it, and it was a rabbit hole, like Alice in Wonderland. So now,
what fascinates you, David? What do you like? Are you into precise things about production, or are you interested in precise things about the dram, or do you like historical things? What's your kind of?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you like all of it, but what?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's the problem for me. I think that I tend to enjoy all of it, which means that there's always more to read, always more to learn. I think the one thing that fascinates me most at the moment is the technical kind of production stuff, because that's not my training. I'm an historian by training, so I'm not a chemist, which means that all the technical literature on whiskey is really, really difficult for me to understand. And when something is really hard,
you need to come on a diploma. You need to come to Ireland and do the diploma. That's what you need.
Certainly. No, but so that's something which fascinates me, just to understand how you can have an idea about, if you want to make a grassy whiskey, what do you do? Like, what in the production do you decide to do? If you want to have a floral whiskey, what do you do? And I guess it started just as being as wanting to know more about the dram. So if I'm drinking this particular whiskey, was it aged in these or those casks? How did they produce it? Was it matured there or there? So that's where it started. But then it just snowballed. So now anything whiskey related, I go, yes, I want to read that book as well.
So, like, when was the last time you were in Islay, David?
I have never been to Islay. Like, this is, yes.
Oh my heavens.
I'm like the guy.
You're like Derek. Yes.
I'm like Derek. I'm like the guy. And
do you have any tattoos?
No, just the one, and it's not about whiskey. So no, it's really, really sad, because my whiskey interest started to like, I couldn't say peak, because it hasn't peaked yet, but it started to grow, become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I went to Pulteney Distillery on a scholarship. So I got to be there and choose a cask which was bottled for the Swedish market. And then I started sort of saving up money to do, like the huge Scotland trip. And it just never materialized. And I have kids, so I have to, do the planning, and then Corona. So now I'm like, now I have to go. So I've never been on Islay. It's really embarrassing. But I can tell you a lot about the distilleries on Islay.
As long as you're drinking lots of whiskey.
Yeah, certainly.
So I was going to talk as well, though, about what's your favourite Islay distillery?
That's one of my best mates. Yeah, he made me promise him I had to say the name of this distillery, because we've been joking about it on the podcast. And it's not my favorite Islay distillery, but now he gets to hear me say Berate. Really, I think it's Lagavulin.
Which is your favorite?
It's my favorite. I think Lagavulin, but it's really hard to choose. So many great distilleries on Islay.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So another thing that I wanted to talk about though was kinds of geekery. So do you think that it's a kind of gender, not to be a geek, right? But the way of being a geek, right? Because there is another. So there's a lady, a student of ours, called Donna Andrews, and Donna is definitely a geek, but not in the way that you are, David. Donna probably comes to Islay maybe 5 times a year. She's involved with, she knows lots of people in Islay. She's involved in lots of things. She has whiskey tastings. She's from California, and she comes to Islay probably 5 times a year. You know, she does whiskey tastings all the time. She knows importers. She came on my diploma, so she's part of our kinship. So I would say that Donna is a huge geek, but not like in the minutiae, and she doesn't maybe engage in the Facebook groups and answer questions and say she's got all this knowledge, but she actually lives it. And I think that's like a geek that's, I'm wondering, is this a specifically female way? What do you think?
That's almost like a kind of cultural thing, isn't it? It's like the whole culture of it that Donna's invested in, almost, you know, the whiskey being of the place, and maybe, I don't know, a way of connecting with the place or something, you know. It's the passion for it and the interest in it is every bit the same, but it just, you know, it just takes different forms with different people, you know. I mean, with what David was saying earlier, I kind of relate to that. I'm not a historian by any means, but that is one of the things that attracted me about whiskey, was the history and the sort of all the stories, really. I just love a good story, I think. And it's all the stories around whiskey, but that's my particular thing. While I understand the importance of all the technical production side of it, that doesn't really sing to me as much. You know, that's not the thing that gets me excited. I don't really care all that much about the temperature of the water that goes in. I don't really care all that much about fermentation times. It just doesn't excite me, although I understand why they're important. For me, it was always stories and history and stuff. I think it's just different aspects of it appeal to different people across the board, you know.
Yes, that's yes. So it's more to do with personality,
possibly,
rather than a kind of gendered thing. But also,
I think one of the things that I think have to do with gender is the way that men tend to use knowledge in order to just explain everything to other people.
I mean, like mansplaining, David.
Yeah, mansplaining, and also trying to use knowledge as a tool of exercising power. That's a very male thing to do. So you can see that, I think, in Malt Maniacs and Friends and other, where I have, you know, ask all these really nerdy questions and then jump in sometimes and discuss things. But that you have this a type of geek which loves to explain to everybody else that they're wrong, and is not really interested in learning new things or in being. It's just the thing is to just be right. And I think that's a very negative kind of geekery, which is really strong in whiskey. It's the kind of people who say you can never water a whiskey, like you can never use ice, never add Coke, or never, and you know, like that. I never water any whiskey, and you think, well, okay, that's.
I think that's quite an old-fashioned. I think that's quite an old-fashioned way of being a geek. And no offense to Malt Maniacs, but I used to struggle terrible with Malt Maniacs. I used to fight in Malt Maniacs years ago to even have a voice, to be heard, because as soon as a woman raised her voice in that, you were just shot down in flames. And so I think Malt Maniacs has kind of had their day, because there's so many other groups now. Because before, Malt Maniacs was the only one. And their style was great, and I'm pleased it was there, you know. But I think it's maybe a wee bit dinosaur-y now. I mean, you know, you can fight back, David, but because there's so many other groups and they're monitored now. I mean, so see, like our Whisky Academy group, the kinship, we would never allow anybody to be nasty to anybody, never. You know, and that's one of the fundamentals. Because my friend said to me, "Oh my God, Rachel, you're always fighting on the. Oh, you must like it." I says, "I don't like it, but I fight so that a woman's voice is heard, because I can do it, because I can say, it's just because of this." But there might be other girls that they can't fight back with the knowledge that I've got. So I was like clearing a swathe, but it was hard, and I used to get upset. You know.
I mean, that's been so much also hotly debated and also contested. Whereas for me, as an academic, from before, I've got a PhD in history and also gender history, so I'm a feminist and proud of it, and which is, I think, not very usual among whiskey nerds, especially not male whiskey nerds, I guess. But you've got so much of that, I think, still. Although I think it was a little bit worse a few years ago. I think the whole kind of comments about my wife now is interested in whiskey too, and then everybody would write things like, "Oh, you have to, you know, like swap, like divorce her and get another wife so she doesn't touch your whiskey," and stuff. Those kinds of really misogynistic comments, I don't really see them that much anymore. I think a little bit of that kind of masculine whiskey is for men style. I think I hopefully it's beginning to fade out.
I do notice as well, when you do see things like that, you'll see the odd meme or something, you know, how do you hide the latest purchase from her indoors and all that kind of thing. I think when you do see that, I notice more women commenting now to say, "Hang on a minute, what about us?" You know, which again I think it's a sign that things are improving a bit, that women now are feeling a bit more able to speak up, and I'm aware of the irony, a man saying that it's okay for a woman to speak up, you know, but you know what I mean? He's seen more evidence of it now, you know. But I just realised I've been very thin ice there.
But I think that kind of geekery with a dash of sexism, that is a very kind of male thing. I think you can find it in basically any area. It's just that I tend to be a whiskey geek, so I can see it in whiskey. But no matter where you go, I think you have this kind of that men tend to do this, to sort of use knowledge just to say that everybody else is wrong. And that's not the kind of geek that's great to have around you, is it?
No. I think though that is fading away, as Neil said, you know, slowly and surely, because I think that the way of appreciating whiskey is changing. You know, so like one of the stories in our online course is from John McChain, Global Master Ambassador for Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and he claimed he came to Islay years and years ago when there wasn't such a thing as visitor centres, and they knocked on the door of Lafroig because that's the distillery of his heart, and he was just a young man, and the security guard took them round, and then they were back staying at Mackie that night, and he had the guy was in the bar drinking, and of course John went up and offered to buy him a drink, and one of John's friends was, you know, because now they'd been around the distillery, they were very knowledgeable. One of John's friends was saying, you know, that it must be only single malt and water and all the rest of it, and I think it's Leslie Calder's dad, he said, he went to the barmaid and he said, "My usual, please." And the barmaid gave him Lafroig and Iron Brew. And he said, "We don't care what you put in it as long as you drink it, because if you're drinking it, then we're making it and we're still in a job." You know, so.
Well, people do get so precious about it, you know, and I almost find, like, and I've seen other people talk about this as well, but it's almost like there's different stages of geekery that people go through. Because I think, and I include myself in this, I think I've been through it as well. And I think you kind of start out as the newbie and you're really excited and hungry for knowledge and enthusiastic about everything. you know, and it's all really exciting and wonderful. And then once you build up a bit of that knowledge, you get to the kind of stage 2, where you that's when you're in danger of getting into that kind of territory where you're a bit too quick to show off your knowledge to people. It's almost like you want to prove it yourself. You want to be accepted in the community. Look how much I know. And maybe sometimes that can veer into correcting people, you know, maybe whether that be over pronunciation or, you know, they've made a mistake, or you're too quick to tell people that they shouldn't put ice in their whiskey or anything like that. You know, and again, a lot of people learn that from books, though, because, you know, there's a lot of old whiskey books that are still on the market, because I've bought plenty myself. And I think when you get into whiskey, if you're anything like me, you devour as much information as you can. And I think that old-fashioned stuff has lingered on a wee bit because of that. You know, the 1 to 2 drops of water and nothing else, and never mix a single malt.
Put something in it to open it up, and you've not even tasted it.
Things like that.
My pet hate.
I think some of that has lingered on a wee bit, you know. But I think when you're in that sort of middle stage is when there's a risk of that. I think there's a kind of third stage, and I'm not claiming I'm there, but it's where I would aspire to be, is when you're kind of the enlightened whiskey lover, you know, and you're much more relaxed about it. You've built up a good amount of knowledge, but you don't feel the need to show it off all the time. Yeah. You just enjoy whiskey for what it is. You're not judgmental about how other people treat their whiskey or what they do with it or how they drink it. You just enjoy it, you know, and that's where everybody wants to be. But it's almost like you've got to go through the stages to get there, you know.
Yeah. So would you say that is an uber geek, or would you say that you stop being a geek then because you're like that? I have given up with this geek nonsense. I
would say the top level's the uber geek, because I think the uber geeks, there's still a hunger for knowledge. They're still wanting to know more. But it's all, you know, it's just, you just become a wee bit more relaxed about it, you know, and you don't feel the need to talk down to others or show off about it. I think you're still just hungry.
Yeah. That's exactly. I think for me, I also went through the kind of to explain to everybody else what this is the real truth now. But then once you like, it's not really, there are not really that many people who are sort of reading research papers about whiskey.
No,
like, that's, you know, and to sort of really get into the idea of the terroir of peat. Well, what kind of research has been done on that? But if I can find someone who likes to talk about that, then I can have that conversation. But if someone just says, oh, this is a great Highland Park, I'm not going to go on and just say, you know, the heather in the peat on Orkney, it's different, like that, and just start to explain everything. Because that's what
we talk about. You need to join the kinship, David. That's what we talk about in the kinship. That's just normal talk to us.
Yeah.
You need to come. This is what you've been missing. You need to join the kinship.
Yeah.
It's just like music, Elaine. Yeah. Hello, Elaine. Yes, it's like music. You need to join our band.
I especially relate to Elaine's comment there, because I think, you know, music is very similar, where you get people who are just as geeky and just as passionate and also just as kind of sneering sometimes. And music is a big love of mine as well, so I see it there a lot. But the two interests have a lot of parallels, I think.
Yeah.
Can we move on to talk about how I think that selling of whiskey has changed because of all the geek whiskey groups on Facebook?
Certainly.
Because I think this is a very interesting thing now, because we don't need a shop. What we just need is a connection to people. And then what you find is loads of casks are being bottled and sold within 10 minutes direct, because this is a new market. We never had this 4 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now every woman and her sheepdog is doing it. You know, you can, if you've got a whiskey group, you can get a cask, people can order it before, you know, and that will pay for it. And then the distillery will bottle it for you. I think this is quite amazing. It's kind of democratizing what we buy. So we can decide what we buy rather than someone else deciding, providing the distillery will sell it to us. What's your experience of that, guys?
For me, I was into casks really, really deeply, like 2014, 15, 16. I don't say I own them because we're lots of people who buy them together. I'm just the guy who administers the whole thing. With Lars, the guy who made the comment, actually, one who said, "Say your favorite Isla distillery." And for me, it's been a great kind of it's been fun mostly. I mean, not all casks turn out great, and not all distilleries are great to be in contact with. But so for me, it's been a great learning experience to do and to sort of get these cask samples and to see how your cask evolves over time. I don't know about today though. I think so much of the buy your cask market at the moment seems to be driven by people trying to make loads of money really, really quickly and selling off casks that you're unsure if they even own them.
So yes. But I don't mean that, David. What I mean is like a whiskey group. So, for instance, Friends of Kilchoman, Friends of Bruichladdich, Friends of Blanc. Okay. So then, I mean, like even me, the Academy, we've got a bottling coming out for the students of a cask. So what they do is they say, we think that we can get a hold of this cask. They're buying from the distillery. Who wants to buy? You give them their money. They get it, they bottle it, and you've got it. And it goes like that. Do you know what I mean? Just that's it. Yeah. So there's no, but they're doing it instantly. And so you can, obviously they'll be taking, they organize it and all the rest of it, and they'll probably take a cut for that. But they're not like really making a huge, it's not like they're,
it's like a cask share, but on a huge scale, because it's maybe people are taking 1 or 2 bottles each, but it's like in the Friends of Bruichladdich group, Derek and John, is it, that kind of took the lead on most of that, and they'll get a couple of samples and narrow it down to 1 or 2 options, and then the group will vote on which one they want, what would prefer. And then, all you need is 200 people or whatever to say, yeah, we'll take a bottle, I'll take 2. And then you'll pay the money and boom, that's the cask bottled and the group has its own whiskey. It's...
What they did, John McDougall also runs Friends of Waterford. And do you know this? That is one of the best bloody Waterfords so far. It's absolutely brilliant. In fact, were you did you get it last year at the kinship at the diploma, Neil?
We must have. Did we? We must have.
Did we not have it when Ned was hosting for us?
Possibly, yeah.
Do you know, David, that was a brilliant dram, and it was for the Friends of Waterford, and John organised it. Just.
Well, that's the guy who wrote the book? It's the old John McDougall?
No, it's his boy. It's his boy.
Yeah.
His son. Yeah.
Okay.
Old John was a manager of Lafroig a way back.
Yeah. That's the one I was thinking about. Yeah.
So it's his son and Derek, the godfather of geeks.
Yeah.
they do that. So, but this is a new way of selling and buying whiskey, and it's quite. So you can say in the group, you could say, because it's like a kind of buying power, a collective buying power. I quite like it. It's like a union.
It's really weird though, isn't it, that there has been, to the best of my knowledge, there's been no bottling for Malt Maniacs and Friends, right? It's too big, I guess.
Yeah.
It's too big a group.
Well, Angus and Serge kind of do the sponge, don't they? Because
there have been a few. It's all about Springbank, the IAAS bottlings. It's all about Springbank. That group has started with one that I really, really, really loved. I had so much fun with that whiskey. Just knowing that this whiskey will be trashed by either the sponge than Angus or Serge Valentin, because it was finished in a red wine cask. And I had it at like 92 points, which is very, very rare for me. Or maybe even 93. I was just over the moon about it. And I knew that like on Whiskey Fun, it's going to get like below 80. So that's one of those fun things I think about whiskey, that you can have very, very different palates.
And also now, I mean, there's a million review sites, and whereas before really there was only Whiskey Fun. So if they said something, then everybody was like, whereas now there might be like 100 that you can respect. Well, there might be a million out there, but there might only be 100 that you respect. There's a lot more people that you can turn to. Whereas like even like about 8 years ago, probably only Serge, really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And just such a multitude of voices that it becomes quite difficult. I think that's in terms of the levels of geekery. I think for me, now it's more about just trying to understand whiskey and where it comes from, rather than just, is this note that I feel, is it this or precisely that? Am I trying to sort of nail down exactly when I'm writing my tasting notes what this is? So I think there are maybe a bit too many voices, and you're just missing out on. I can't read, like 30 different reviews of whatever whiskey it is I'm drinking. Who would want
to? Half of them are as boring as hell anyway.
Yeah, and just like read
Neil's whiskey reviews.
Just the whole thing is like, I like to write tasting notes, and people in Sweden at least tend to read what I write, but to read other people's tasting notes, I don't find it that fun. I think it's more fun to read about distilleries, or read about those stories that you mentioned, Neil, or how whiskey was produced in the 1960s, or the crisis of the 1890s, and there's just so much you can read, which is more interesting really than what person X thought. But
you'd only understand in reviews in one way, David, because you see now people write reviews in lots of different ways. So what Neil does is Neil tells you about the distillery and how it grew out of that.
Yeah, you know I think that's exactly what David's sort of saying, though, unless I picked him up, because I tend to really agree that tasting notes, I mean, I think they serve a purpose if they're there just to give a rough idea of what kind of experience someone can expect. Because writing a review is basically, it's consumer advice, basically, it's only an opinion, but it's consumer advice at the end of the day. And all you should be doing is giving a rough description, because nobody's going to taste all the same stuff anyway. And I do think whiskey for a long time has had not a problem, but a sort of a thing where people like to go as in depth as possible in tasting notes, and that's fine.
I'm terrible for that.
No, but see if you're guilty. I'm 100% guilty.
If it's something that's giving you pleasure, and I think sometimes it can be great, like in a discussion setting, if you're sitting down and everybody's comparing what they're tasting, it can be really interesting. I just think written down, it's not always the most interesting thing to read, a big list of tasting notes, And when you think of all the things you could talk about with whiskey, that's probably the least interesting thing you could do, But I totally agree on that. This is interesting. If I can just interject a wee second here. When we did a sort of dress rehearsal, if you like, for this 2 days ago, David spoke a little bit about his English, which is excellent, by the way. But he mentioned that
better than our Swedish.
Absolutely, but he mentioned that over time he may develop a slight sort of start to sound Scottish or something. So I just wanted to throw up this comment.
I love it.
Very good.
I do the podcast with 2 Swedish friends, right? And they say that every now and then we do it in Swedish, and every now and then I say something which is supposedly in Scottish accent, and they go, "You sound Irish when you try to sound Scottish."
See, Elaine's a singer.
So I'm developing Irish twang.
But Elaine's a singer, so she's got a brilliant ear. So she picked up that. Good.
That was my English, my school English being intertwined with your different Scottish accents, and then it turns to something Irish. Yeah, Irish. It's funny.
Yep.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about, because I'm aware that time's marching on with us, is a strange thing that I noticed recently, and it's like a bizarre marketing where they are. I've seen it on Instagram, and I mean, I'm not going to mention names or brands specifically, right? But I actually, what do you call it, the page, you know, when you copy the page, and I sent it to Neil because it was this brand, and this person told a very personal story about their family and said, oh, but we drink this whiskey together. And I thought, no, you don't. So this marketing is using a real emotional thing and eliciting that from this person and connecting it to a product to sell. I was quite horrified. Has anyone else experienced this kind of thing?
I mean, all I'll say quickly before I let David come in, I have a lot of issues with Instagram in general. I find that, I mean, all social media can be and is problematic, but Instagram I find so fake. It's just, I find it all so false, and I think like there doesn't seem to be a lot of receiving going on. Instagram, every single person is on broadcast. Nobody's listening. We're all just shouting out. Do you know what I mean? Nobody's actually.
That's why I like it.
But you know, nobody. There's no conversation really. It's just look at what I'm selling. Look at what I'm selling. You know, and we're all doing the same thing, and no one's really interacting or anything. And you know, you see the account you were talking about, Rachel. I had a look, and I've seen, I don't know how many other accounts that are the same. You know, they've maybe posted about 60 times, and they've got 16,000 followers. And you just know these people are buying followers. They're buying fake accounts to follow them. And it's, you know, none of this is real. You're just pretending. You know, you're pretending to be an influencer, and the only people you're influencing is Russian robots that are pretending to like your page. You know what I mean? I find the whole thing utterly bizarre. You know, and
I didn't like the strange thing of it was a real emotional thing, and it was being used to sell this brand of whiskey. I find that really twisted.
I think one of the
I've seen it as bad as that.
Yeah,
you know, it's really odd.
But again, I think that's maybe symptomatic that people will sell their soul to appear popular on Instagram. You know, there's nothing people won't give over if they think pulling hits. You know,
what's really sad about it though is you can spot it like a mile away. I usually think about the people who used to be bloggers but who stopped blogging and then became brand ambassadors. Like we know at least 20 such people. They started writing a blog and then they became a brand ambassador because they wanted to become a brand ambassador. So that's why they started a blog. Whereas for me, that's like the worst. It's the worst career way ever for someone. Like if you want to write about whiskey, you have to write that you think this whiskey is bad as well. Like, but if you want to be a brand ambassador, you have to love everything. So you have to be, this whiskey is great. Now I've tasted this whiskey. It's fantastic. Please, somebody hire me so that I can give tastings and say that your brand is great.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Terrible. But you see, I know exactly what you mean, David. But see, when I write about whiskey, if I don't like it, I don't write about it because I support Scotch, especially Islay, right? But it's Scotch. So if I can't support it, I don't write about it. That's my way of doing it. Now that's not to say
where we
if I don't write about it, I don't like it because I'm not the fastest, so I've not got loads. But I don't write in bad because I just don't. I mean, I'll say it to you and I'll say it to Neil afterwards. I don't publicize bad.
But there are two different routes there. There's one which is if you support Scotch, if you have something to do with the industry and you like Scotch, so you want to be silent about it. The other is you want to maybe get a job at that distillery. So those are two different things.
Yes.
But I think the whole, because I hear that quite a lot. Like, if I don't like a whiskey, I don't write about it. For me, that's like, imagine if you're a literary critic or a theater critic and you go to a play or you read a novel and it's shite, and you just say, well, I'm not going to write about this in the paper.
But I'm not
It's like really important customer information.
Yeah, but that's not my job. I'm not a critic. My job is Isle of Whisky Academy, support Scotch. We want to educate people about it. It's like I want to shine a light on the good bits. Do you know what I mean? Other folk can shine a light on stuff that they don't like. I'm not going to do that, because what I'm doing is I'm wanting people to really love and appreciate, and I do in depth and all the rest of it. So it's not the same as being a critic. I'm not a critic.
No.
So that's, do you know what I mean?
I'm just thinking that there is so much, like, in terms of, to get back to the question of how Scotch or how whiskey is sold, I think there is so much in the whole kind of marketing of whiskey. I haven't seen this piece that you mentioned on Instagram, but for me, that's like one of the things with whiskey I have a real problem with. And that's, I guess, if someone is like a huge car geek, they can see through the marketing. I don't care about cars at all. But I know a lot about whiskey. And then when people say things like, we only take the best bit of the spirit to put in casks, I'm like, yes, that's how you do when you distill. Like, it's got nothing to do with your brand. So I think
hand-selected oak.
Yeah, hand-selected casks. I'm like, come on! But so I think for me, that's one of those things I have a real problem with.
Or terrible marketing teams. There was a marketing team. Now, I'm not going to mention, but everybody will know about this. There was a marketing team recently, and they were promoting an Isle of Whisky, and they showed the coastline of Iceland.
Yes.
Seriously, I mean, insane. You know, they got
any coastline will do.
What planet are they on? You know what I mean? I don't like mental. I'm aware that we're marching on with time, but we wanted to do the Super Geek quiz, because our own Super Geek here, Neil Murphy, has made a brilliant quiz. So, David, you've to answer as well, because we know what one you're going to be in. And I meant to say to people to get a pen and paper, because we're not going to count up your score. We trust you to do it yourselves.
So am I supposed to sort of just shout out answers?
Yeah, you can. It's multiple choice, so you can tell us which one you would go for.
Okay.
Right. So like you start it off, and we can share, because I've got got it written here as well.
Right. So this quiz is entitled, "What kind of whiskey geek are you?"
So this is for all you folk at home there.
We'd love, please do, if you do take part. I mean, this is just for fun, but if you do take part, please let us know what your answer was. So yeah, question number one is, if you see someone add ice to their whiskey, do you A, leave them to it, it's their whiskey, B, berate them and explain slowly why ice is bad for whiskey, or C, join them, it tastes better with ice anyway?
Well, it depends if you're in a hot country. Can I qualify these? Am I allowed to qualify? Oh, that's been a geek, is it?
Depends which whiskey it is in the glass.
Generally, you've got to say, I would say
for me,
C.
I would go with, I think A was the one. I just leave them to it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, just because it's your whiskey, you do you.
Yeah.
Can I do the next one, because it's relative to me? So you hear someone call the islands a region. Do you A, ignore it? The islands probably should be a region. B, advise them that the islands are not a region and only an idiot would think otherwise. Or C, ask them what a region is. This sounds like the Isle of Whisky Academy diploma exam.
This might be one of those times when I haven't reached the Uber Geek sort of kind of yogi level. There might be a risk that I'll say, actually, the islands are not a region. And also, Isla is not a region. It's a protected locality. Really?
It's an independent state.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So,
Okay.
right, Neil,
I'll do number 3. Okay. So number 3, someone in a bar orders a blended Scotch. Do you A, join them? There's nothing wrong with a good old-fashioned blend. B, loudly order an expensive single malt to demonstrate your superior tastes. Or C, ask who Johnny Walker is.
Well, there's
That's very cheeky, Neil Murphy.
I guess out of those 3, I would have to choose to just order a blend with them.
Oh, would
Although
you? Now,
I have to admit, I rarely try blends. Actually, I'm bad at it.
I know I'm B, but I wouldn't do it loudly.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I wouldn't go like, I want this.
But I probably would ask C as well, especially if it was in that bar just across in Edinburgh. I'd say the big loud for.
Oh, of course.
I just show this. In terms of blended, an old blend proudly says, "Where do I go? Aged 3 years."
Nice.
Isn't it lovely?
Well, look, I'm
really,
drinking
really bad blended whiskey, but it's fun.
It works. I'm drinking a private. What?
Oh, I think I know what that is. Yeah.
You know this one? This is a homemade one.
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah.
I'm trying it out. This is another geek of ours, a friend of ours. So this is Tamara Wagner, David. She's the Isle of Whisky Academy German ambassador. And she made this. She's got a wee cask at home, so she put her Ardbeg 10 in it. It's just a small cask. We've only left it for 40 days.
That's fun.
Layered, but it's nice.
This, I just have to say, when people say there is no bad whiskey, that's where you have to correct them. That's just not true. There's lots of bad whiskey, and this
is. Oh, right. Is it me? I've had to read it out now.
Yeah, I think number 4.
Your favourite whiskey brand removes the words non-chill filtered from their label. Do you A, withhold judgment until you've tried the whiskey? B, comment on social media groups, preferably in capital letters, explaining how angry and let down you feel? I mean, how can they do this to me? Fans like me deserve better. Or C, carry on regardless. You've got no idea what chill filtering is.
I'm A. I'm definitely A there.
I was going to say C, but I better not say that.
What I really would like, though, is wouldn't it be wonderful if a brand would just, for the hell of it, just bottle like 8,000 bottles of whatever, 10-year-old, and then bottle from the exact same casks, and then bottle it chill filtered, but at the exact same alcohol level?
Yep.
Because now we're all like, yeah, it really removes lots of flavors. Well, you don't know, because you've never, ever been able to put them side by side, right?
It would be great to taste that. Yeah, the exact same whiskey, chill filtered and not chill filtered. Taste them side by side. Yeah, it's the only conclusive way of saying. Yeah.
I think that guys, you're really showing your uber geekiness. Because for me, it's the difference between a beef burger and a bit of steak with marbling. You know, I mean, I know what I'm going to buy, but go with your geekery. I'm impressed. That's what this show is all about.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Number 5. A popular distillery releases a new limited edition and you fail to score a bottle. Do you A, shrug it off and move on to the next fantastic whiskey? B, express fury online and angrily tell distillery workers how awful their website is? C, carry on regardless because you really only buy whatever's on offer at the local supermarket anyway?
C, I'm definitely C.
Oh, I love these questions so much. Because it's like so many people are looking at whiskies that are being released as it's their human right to get just their hands on one bottle.
Especially poor people whose websites crash, like Poor Lafroig and Push Bring Bank.
And it's just like there's outrage. And also, I'm definitely A. But
well, you're
really spot on with the way that everybody's like, I couldn't get my hands on a bottle.
I find
thousands of them around.
If there's a negative side to whiskey geekery, I think in general geeks are a good thing. I mean, businesses like the Isle of Whiskey Academy might not exist if there weren't people geeky enough to want to come and do it, But if there's a negative side to it, it's people who are maybe a wee bit too obsessed, and too caught up in the FOMO, the fear of missing out. If you can't miss out on a bottle without losing your mind, then maybe step back a wee bit. And it's supposed to be fun. This is meant to be fun. Enjoy yourself,
I think also there's this great piece by Whiskey Sponge when they raised the price of some bottling or other. I can't remember which one. And he had this headline saying, people really, really angry about Bamor not handing out more free money. Because the price it's really what people were angry about.
Absolutely.
We should get my chances of making money.
We should get the Sponge to write about this amazing phenomenon that Neil has written about today. So Glasgow Distillery had 50 CL bottles. And Liam told us this because Liam hosted for us at the diploma last year. But anyway, it's been announced today that they're putting the bottle size up to 70 CL and the price is the same. It's the only distillery that's giving away free whiskey.
Yay!
More whiskey without putting the price. It's got to be a first. That's got to be a first. Bigger bottles, same price.
I have to quote a friend now who said, when I tried to convince him about that it was a great idea to just buy samples, the 3 centiliter bottles. And my friend said, well, 70 centiliters, that's a sample.
Yeah.
It's like, then okay, I really like this. I'll buy 5 more bottles of that.
Yes, let's buy more at that size.
Yeah.
Are we on number 6 now, Neil?
Yes,
Right, in conversation, someone mentions that they don't like whiskey. What? How do you respond? Encourage them to have another try. There's a encourage them to have another try. There's a flavour profile for everyone, and it's okay to mix or dilute if it's too strong. B, scoff and tell them they haven't tried proper whiskey before handing them a glass of, he says Octomore, but if it was about me, it would just say Isla. No. C, remain quiet and hope no one remembers you said the same thing you said the same thing yourself a few months ago. What would be you, David?
The thing is, I would be C, because I hate to be the guy who wants to explain to people about whiskey. Like, if you don't like whiskey, I don't feel a strong urge to like, yes, but it's great. You should try it. And I'm just like, okay, you don't like it. That's fine. Not everybody has to like whiskey.
So you would be C.
I would be C, yeah.
Okay. Neil?
Right, so number 7.
Yep.
Someone spells Scotch whiskey with an E. Do you A, ignore it? The 2 words mean the same thing and everyone has to start somewhere. B, advise them only the Irish and Americans use that spelling. Or C, why is there 2 spellings anyway?
Yeah,
well, I mean, they're both spelt wrong. It's really Ushkabeta, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Of course, you have to go there. Oh yeah, I'm A.
There's that pedantry we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things that has been discussed so many times, and then the geeks start saying, yes, but there are American whiskeys who don't have the E. And then there is this Irish distillery which doesn't have the E. I
think we run in here as a super geek about other super geeks. And that could actually be a thing for study in its own right.
Yes.
Okay, number 8. You're asked the question, what is your favourite whiskey? How do you respond? A, there's so much great whiskey, I couldn't possibly narrow it down to one. B, name the rarest, most expensive whiskey you can think of. Or C, I usually stick to Glenmorangie.
I think Yeah, I would probably go with A, and then say something about how I have a favorite whiskies for winter and others for summer, and for times when I feel like this, and for other times when I feel like that, and then there's just such a huge. I think that's also one of the things I love about whiskey, that it can be so like wildly different. So many, like all the way from like this extreme peaters to just floral and delicate, and from
Champagne whiskey.
age to young to, that's just such a variety in there, which I think
no
other spirit has.
Sorry and I think I wanted to mention earlier that I want to say about Neil is that until Neil and I started working a lot, because Neil's the host of my kinship group, David, for the academy, the student alumni group, and Neil focuses on a different kind of whiskey, kind of more, or writes about a different kind of whiskey maybe that I focus on, and the way of looking at the industry, and it's opened a door for me, because it's like I never, do you know what I mean? And I find that really interesting. I just wanted to say that. So that's another kind of geekery, or do you know, another section of geekery, because I appreciate now, I'm thinking about this now, thinking about it differently. It's the same way as the first time that I went to Glasgow Distillery, and that's an urban distillery. And I realised, oh my God, you can have an urban distillery. Whereas before, I thought they had to kind of grow out of the land. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, anyway, that's just a wee aside, Neil. I wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Right.
Whatever, number 9. Right. You're visiting a distillery and the shop has 3 bottles for sale, a no age statement, a 15-year-old, and an expensive distillery exclusive. Which one do you buy? A, the one that tastes the best. B, the distillery exclusive because I'll get the most kudos from my drinking buddies. Or C, the no age statement. No way I'd pay the money for anything else.
Why have you not got D, one that I can flip?
Oh, don't let's not get started.
No, let's not talk with that. No, probably I don't do that.
Probably practically, if it's the NAS is very unlikely to be the best of those 3, if you ask me, and the 15-year-old is very likely that I've already tried, so it would probably be the most expensive one. Yeah.
Good reasoning.
A distillery, an expensive distillery, an exclusive, a distillery exclusive. Why would a non-age statement not be good, David?
Well, I'm not saying it's probably really, really bad. I would say that there are great NAS whiskies. That's how you say it, right? NAS, no age statement.
Yeah.
But like, just from experience, if you take 40 NAS whiskies and you take 40 15-year-olds, on general, the 15-year-olds will be better.
But you know that age is just a parameter, the same way NAS is a parameter.
Well, yeah, I thought you were going to say age is just a number. That's when I go, no, it isn't.
We haven't got time to go into, because we've gone over our time. This is the longest one we've ever had.
Yeah,
okay. That's fine. People are enjoying it. It's okay.
Right? Number 10 we're on.
Yeah, number 10.
During a distillery tour, the guide makes a joke about cows being happy because they're fed on the draft. Do you A, smile wryly to yourself? I'm wondering many times you've heard this line. Same one about the grass coming up half cut, but we'll not mention that. B, cut loudly and tell whoever will listen that there's actually no alcohol in the draft. Or laugh heartily at the notion of pissed cows stumbling around the Scottish countryside.
Whatever works, and being polite and not disturbing who's ever giving the tour, I think I would do. I hate to be the person who goes like, actually,
yes,
be that person is just
no,
terrible.
Yeah.
I think I would probably not say anything, even if there were straight out lies at the distillery tour. I would just like, it's impolite to just say that this is not true, and then I would just like write an angry blog piece about it instead.
Well, do you know, it's funny you say that, because I won't name the distillery, but I visited a distillery in September last year, It was a Highland distillery. And at the end of the tour, when we were tasting a dram, the man who did the tour held his glass up to the light and he was telling us all, look how clear that is, look how wonderfully clear it is. And then he turned to the group and said, if you're ever given a whiskey that's not crystal clear in the glass, you must give it back. And I was sitting going, really? But again, I didn't want to say in front of 10 people, I didn't want to say, actually, I don't want to be that guy. But, in my head, I'm going, wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But you want to be polite. Like, you don't want to disturb the mood of the room and be that guy.
Yeah.
So, have you got an idea of was it mainly A's or B's or C's, David? Because I wasn't keeping track.
I think I was mainly A.
Right.
Oh, well done. A's. You have reached enlightenment. You have been around the block and seen it all. You've had more whiskies than you could ever possibly remember. You've got a ton of knowledge, but you don't feel the need to prove yourself. To be honest, it's getting harder and harder to remember things these days anyway. What's your name again? But Neil's going to read out the other ones for the other people.
Okay, so if you happen to answer mostly B, I doubt many people would have, but if you answered mostly B's, you have progressed well beyond the newbie stage. You've memorized the rules and regulations. You can and will rhyme off facts and figures at the drop of a hat, and woe betide anyone who mispronounces a distillery in your presence. You will not tolerate ice and whiskey, regardless of whose glass it is. You look down at the newbies and you can't understand why the old hands can't be bothered getting into an argument about caramel colouring. You're probably a bit of a twat.
Before I read the last line, right, because I've got it here on my phone, Elaine, I was going to say in a joke, that'll be Elaine about the rules and regulations and about the ice and all the rest of it, right? And then I read the last line, I was like, no, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
And then if you answered mostly C's, you're just starting out. Everything is new and exciting. Oh, that's us. Your home collection has just moved into double figures. You've actually no idea how to pronounce Ardbeg. Oh, no, sorry, Bunnahaven. You're a bit scared to ask questions in public in case you sound stupid. You ask for a recommendation in a Facebook group and then feel utterly overwhelmed when the name of every whiskey brand that's ever been conceived, that's right, is thrown at you. Really, you just want something nice to sip on and think drinking whiskey makes you look cool, and you really do know who Johnny Walker is. No, he didn't write that at the end. So can we thank Neil for making that big, huge quiz? Yes.
That's perfect.
So
David,
David,
we
have got Geekdom record here because this is the longest we've ever been on. So we thank you very, very much for being our special geek guest.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I'm going to have to listen to this afterwards to see if I have an Irish twang.
He really is a super geek.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And I know that all the students of Isla Whisky Academy would have got 100% in the quiz. We're not saying whether it was A, B, or C, but we just know they would have got 100%. So night until the next time.
Will we just do a wee, before we go, Rachel, if anyone needs to get in touch with us, are there any spaces coming up for any of the academies left this year or anything like that?
Well, I mean, if somebody wanted to quickly book their ticket, they're welcome to come on the April diploma, which starts in 3 weeks' time. And we've also got another diploma in September and October. No, you don't need to rush so quickly for that. But we've got lots of exciting things for the faux, right? So we've got events all through the week, and we've got our own open day on the Thursday, the 2nd of June. And your man here, Mr. Murphy, is presenting a whisky tasting called Ceol Agus Crack, which will be absolutely brilliant. So that's on the Thursday morning. But all these, there's also, we're doing the Enchanting Scotland show. We're doing Alchemy of Distilling. What else are we doing? Celtic Connections,
Celtic Connections,
tasting with a special guest. It's a Celtic Cousins tasting with a special guest, who we're not going to just reveal just now, but we know that she's watching. So we've got loads of stuff for our open day, and then through that week of the Fish, we've got things, and they will be on our website soon, maybe next week.
Great stuff. And if anybody needs to contact, what's the email?
Yes, email. So it'll be info@isleofwhiskeyacademy.scot, or contact us on. Oh, look! Oh, you see, look!
No, where?
It's all there. It's all there. Neil's figured all that out. You see, we've got a routine and we've got all this now.
I've got all these new toys to play with now.
Why Tech Geeks? Because we had to be so, because David was coming on the show.
Okay then. So I think that's just about us then, is it? So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We'll be back again next. Well, we'll be doing one next month from the course, won't we?
From the Fish, yeah.
In fact, we'll be doing one. Okay, we're going to do it. Wait a minute, where are we? Because we're a week late, aren't we? So
yes.
are we doing one at the end of April?
Oh no, we're doing it from the Academy. We're doing one from the Academy. Yes, there'll be one at the end of this month because we're a week late. Yep.
Yeah.
See, we're not the speediest. We might not be the speediest, but we are the best.
We get there in the end. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Slange.
Thanks for having me. Slange.